The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America, The Missing Skeletons, and the Great Smithsonian Cover-Up, originally written by Richard J. Dewhurst. This audio presentation is read and voiced by Shakim Ra. It is provided to the public by Amin Ra University. Chapter 5: Pyramid and Pictorial Mound. At the turn of the 20th century, there was a national awareness of the mound builders and their extensive earthworks that far exceeded contemporary consciousness on the subject. Since the majority of the country still lived an agrarian lifestyle, awareness of the mounds was reinforced by daily contact with the actual sites themselves. Current estimates put the number of known American mounds at well over 100,000. They ranged in shape from the Great Pyramids of Illinois to the fantastic pictorial mounds of Wisconsin. It seemed to be common knowledge that giants were found buried in many of these mounds and that these giants were not related to the present-day American Indians living in the region. The Great Pyramid Mounds of Illinois, one of the largest of the mound builder sites in North America, is located in southwestern Illinois near Collinsville. It is commonly called the Cahokia site. The Cahokia Mound Complex has been compared in scope and grandeur to the Great Pyramid. The site is located at the confluence of the Mississippi, Missouri, and Illinois rivers, directly across from the Mississippi River from present-day St. Louis. During the Middle Ages, Cahokia was a larger city than London with an estimated population of 40 to 50,000. Yet today, it is an abandoned place about which we know almost nothing. Centuries ago, there were more than 120 mounds at the Cahokia site, though the locations of only 106 have been recorded. Many of them have been destroyed or altered because of modern farming and construction, although 68 have been preserved inside of the boundaries of the Cahokia Mound State Historic Site. Lawyer and writer H.M. Brackenridge captured the awe of seeing the Cahokia complex in 1811. He crossed the Mississippi at St. Louis and, after making his way through the woods along the Cahokia Creek, passed over the plain to the mounds. He referred to them as, quote, resembling enormous haystacks scattered through a meadow. Journal of a Voyage Up the Mississippi River in 1811 by Henry Marie Brackenridge. When I reached the foot of the principal mound, I was struck with a degree of astonishment not unlike that which is experienced in contemplating the Egyptian pyramids. What a stupendous pile of earth! To heap up such a mass must have required years and labors of thousands. Pursuing my walk along the bank of Cahokia, I passed 8 other mounds in the distance of 3 miles before I arrived at the largest assemblage. When I reached the foot of the principal mound, I was struck with a degree of astonishment not unlike that which is experienced in contemplating the Egyptian pyramids. What a stupendous pile of earth! To heap up such a mass must have required years and labors of thousands. It stands immediately on the banks of the Cahokia, and on the side next to it is covered with lofty trees. Were it not for the regularity and design it manifests, the circumstances of it being on alluvial ground and the other mounds scattered around it, we would scarcely believe it be the work of human hands. The site is named after a tribe of Illinois Indians, the Cahokia, who lived in the area when the French arrived in the late 1600s. What the actual name of the city may have been in ancient times is unknown. The modern archaeological site is believed to have existed from AD 700 until its decline in 1300. By 1500, it is thought to have been completely abandoned. As is the case with many of the ancient mound builder sites, a true accounting of the ancient history of the mounds is almost impossible due to the destruction of over half the mounds at the site, coupled with the lack of any modern excavation work that could dig down to the earlier construction at Cahokia, which may be thousands of years earlier than the dates currently assigned by conventional archaeology. The largest earthwork in the Cahokia complex is a stepped pyramid which covers about 16 acres. It is often called Monk's Mound after Trappist monks who farmed the terraces in the early 1800s. It was apparently rebuilt several times in the distant past. At the summit of the mound are the buried remains of some sort of temple, further adding to the mystery of the site. Monk's Mound measures 100 feet tall, with an original base of 1,000 feet. These even measurements in feet have raised the interest of alternative historians, as well as its numerous astronomical alignments that show great similarities to alignments at Stonehenge and Teotihuacan, among numerous significant ancient sites. Mysterious Mound 72. In addition, during the excavation of Mound 72, a ridge-top burial mound south of Monk's Mound, archaeologists found the remains of a man in his 40s, buried on a bed of more than 20,000 marine shell disc beads, arranged in the shape of a falcon with the bird's head appearing beneath and besides the man's head, and its wings and tail beneath his arms and legs. Archaeologists also recovered more than 250 other skeletons from Mound 72. Scholars believe almost 62% of these were sacrificial victims based on signs of ritual execution and method of burial. Circular wooden sun calendars called Woodhenge. Some archaeologists believe the last survivors of the mound builders were the Natchez Indians of the lower Mississippi Valley. These Indians were known for being devout worshippers of the sun, which may explain the uses of the mounds at Cahokia and the so-called Woodhenge at the site. These 48 wooden posts make up a 410-foot diameter circle, and by lining up the central observation post with specific perimeter posts at sunrise, the exact date of all 4 equinoxes can be determined. Entire books have been written about the many geological and astral alignments associated with the Cahokia complex. Although these studies are dismissed by conventional archaeologists as the wishful thinking of wild-eyed amateurs, what cannot be denied is the amazing similarity between the Woodhenge construction found at Cahokia and the similarly constructed Woodhenge found next to Stonehenge in England. Although these were the finds revealed to the public after the official 1922 excavation, a previous unofficial dig at the site uncovered hundreds more skeletons, some giant in nature, which have all disappeared from the historical record. Only 40 of 120 mounds survive at Cahokia. The wholesale destruction of the Cahokia complex is one of the greatest tragedies in the history of modern archaeology in the United States. Although the site was recognized as highly important as early as the 17th century, no official efforts were made to preserve and study the site. As a result, well over half the site was destroyed by farmers and city planners from St. Louis. Despite national efforts to preserve the site, at the turn of the century, Cahokia was not given National Historic Landmark status until the 1960s. Experts show racism by dismissing the mounds. The Chicago Tribune, August 10, 1892, quote, "Racism and prejudice said the, quote, lazy Indian couldn't have made the mound," says archaeologist James Anderson. That meant excavation of the site about 10 miles east of St. Louis named Cahokia after a group of Indians that lived in the area in the 17th century was slow in starting, in part because early experts refused to believe that Indians had built the majestic earthen pyramids that still stand today. Cahokia was 6.5 square miles in area, covering some 6.5 square miles. Cahokia boasted streets, warehouses, man-made lakes, docks, crude but workable astronomical observatories, walled fortifications, and scores of earthen mounds as tall as 10 stories. Flourishing between 900 and 1300 CE, the city dominated the American bottoms, a fertile 175 square mile valley near the confluences of the Mississippi, Illinois, and Missouri rivers. "You know, it was a great city," said Anderson, director of the Cahokia Mounds Museum, "but we may be shortchanging it. It may have been an empire." Excavations have revealed that Cahokian commerce reached from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast and from the Western Plains to the Appalachian Mountains, and controlled such raw materials as copper, mica, seashells, and flint. The Monk's Mound Temple. Monk's Mound, a flat-top pyramid named for Trappist monks who lived nearby in the 19th century, has a base covering some 14 acres, rises in 4 terraces to a height of 100 feet, and is estimated to contain some 22 million cubic feet of earth. It is thought to have supported a building at least 50 feet high that was a residence of a leader who held both political and religious power in Cahokia. While the Monk's Mound dominated the city center, which was enclosed by a 15-foot high wooden stockade almost 3 miles long, other mounds, conical, ridge, and flat-shaped, dotted the countryside. The functions of the mounds are not known, but there is evidence they were used for burials and as boundary markers. The excavation of one ridge-top mound revealed some 300 ceremonial and sacrificial burials, mostly young women in mass graves, and the body of what appears to be a male ruler, about 45 years old, on a blanket of more than 20,000 seashell beads and surrounded by the bodies of attendants. The extensive public works and human sacrifices are evidence of a class society in which rulers held sway over life and death and labor. Excavation of one ridge-top mound revealed some 300 ceremonial and sacrificial burials, mostly young women in mass graves, and the body of what appears to be a male ruler about 45 years old on a blanket of more than 20,000 seashell beads, and surrounded by the bodies of attendants. The extensive public works and human sacrifices are evidence of a class society in which rulers held sway over life and death and labor, explains Anderson. Outside the city center were 4 circular sun calendars of large, evenly spaced log posts called wood hinges because of their similarity to Stonehenge in Britain. Probably used to predict the changing of the seasons, they are the most advanced scientific achievement found at Cahokia. Of some 120 mounds built at Cahokia, the Indians carried earth in 60-pound basket loads from pits as far as a mile away. Only 40 are preserved within a 750-acre state park. The rest are on private lands and have been mostly plowed over by farmers or covered with asphalt in the name of progress, said Anderson, bitterly observing a growing urban sprawl at the foot of the most spectacular of the earthen pyramids, Monk's Mound. Attempts to save the mounds. In 1905, Congress was petitioned to save the mound builder sites from destruction. Although Congress made noises about saving these mound sites from further destruction, funds were not forthcoming. In the case of Cahokia, it took until 1964 for that complex to receive official protection as a National Historic Landmark. Similar tales were told across the nation since the majority of these sites were on private lands and the government offered no compensation for preservation of the mounds. To compound matters, the mound builders still have no official standing as an indigenous Native American people, as no official descendants of the mound builders have ever been recognized by the courts of the United States. Early bill calls for mounds preservation. Galveston Daily News, August 20th, 1905. A bill now before Congress having for its objective the preserving and protecting from despoliation the historic and prehistoric ruins or monuments on the public lands of the United States, especially Colorado and Utah where the cliff dweller once dwelt, and placing them under the care and custody of the Secretary of the Interior, has served somewhat to revive popular interest in a subject that has been heretofore largely dominant except among scientists. While the bill in question applies only to the preservation of monuments on public land and particularly to the ruins scattered over the semi-arid regions of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado that have left many evidences of their occupancy of the so-called Pueblo region, it is conceivable that the movement may soon extend and take the form of legislative action looking to similar enclosures with reference to the numerous prehistoric remains of the Mississippi and Ohio valleys. Private lands, but public destruction. These mound builder sites are located almost invariably on private lands, and though it is true in some few cases the owners have for sentimental reasons maintained the integrity of the mounds and earthworks allotted on their property, in the vast majority of cases, the commercial instinct has prevailed, and the original outlines are fast obliterated by time and the abrading wear of the white man's plow. Archaeologists, anthropologists, historians, indeed, patriotic Americans of every class have interest in preserving these relics of bygone days. Every state in the Union, from Wisconsin to the Gulf, and from Virginia to Nebraska, has more or fewer of the mounds and earthworks which were built hundreds, perhaps thousands of years ago. In Mississippi and elsewhere, they can be seen from the car windows of railroad trains or from carriages on the highways. These mounds are mostly terraced and truncated pyramids in shape, usually square or rectangular, but sometimes hexagonal or octagonal. They differ greatly in size. One in West Virginia is 70 feet high and 1,000 feet in circumference. The Cahokia Mound in Illinois, opposite the northern section of the city of St. Louis, is the largest of them all, rising in terraces from a base of 1,150 feet by 700 feet to a height of 100 feet, area larger than that occupied by the Great Pyramid of Egypt. In Ohio and other states, there are mounds approaching these in magnitude, but generally they range from 6 to 30 feet in height. The Fort Ancient earthwork on the Little Miami River in the contour roughly of a figure 8 and about 220 feet, about 22 feet above the surface at its highest, is now enthroned by a public park and watched over by the Ohio Historical Society. Cahokia was once of the grandest capitals of this extremely ancient mound-building culture, and the artistry of the site alone should have given it supreme protection, but as will be seen in the following shocking expose of criminal neglect on the part of the Smithsonian and the Parks Division, as early as 1828, these ancient mound sites were already in peril of total destruction. The following story appeared as a lavishly illustrated Sunday feature in the Frederick News Post in Virginia, but this article was also nationally syndicated. Again, the following are the actual headlines and in-depth quotes from this very provocative piece of historical muckraking on behalf of protecting these mound sites from eventual sure destruction. The Great Cahokia Mound, which should be a national monument in danger of destruction. Works of prehistoric mound builders are scattered across the United States by Rene Bachet in the Frederick News Post, January 20th, 1928. The largest and most impressive memorial of the prehistoric mound builders is in danger of destruction, and the U.S. Bureau of Ethnology is anxious that it be declared a national monument and thereby preserved. It is the Great Cahokia Mound across the river from St. Louis in Illinois, rising in the midst of a level plain and rectangular in shape. It is 99 feet high and 998 feet long, an artificial hill that may be seen from the railroad approaching St. Louis from the east. Compared to the pyramids, students of antiquity regard it as comparable in archaeological interest to the pyramids of Egypt. It is believed to have been in prehistoric times the site of a temple which may have been comparable in size and grandeur to the ancient Sun Temple, whose ruins were recently discovered in the far southwest. That structure, built of cut stone, was 400 feet long. It had only one narrow door, and a curious detail that has been preserved is a peephole through which a watcher could inspect persons wishing to enter. Plea to save the mounds. Here is another of the many public pleas to save the mounds from destruction. In this case, from the 1960s, it is a large mound complex located in Whitewater that was scheduled for a suburban subdivision. Residents try to save mounds. Janusville Gazette, August 13, 1965.